With me is the leader of UKIP, Nigel Farage. You've heard what the Prime Minister says. He believes it's the patriotic thing to do for voters to vote to remain in the European Union. And one of the key arguments he was making is that it makes the UK and Europe safer to have a strong European Union. What's your response?
Well, how can it be patriotic to give away the ability to make your own laws, to have your own courts being supreme, the ability to control your own borders, and to give everybody a passport that says on it European Union? You know, you may argue economically it's good for us to become part of a bigger bloc, but it most certainly is not patriotic. Patriotic is believing we're good enough to run our own country and make our own laws. As for peace in Europe, well, unless the Prime Minister is suggesting that the Germans have tanks massing on the borders covered in camouflage nets, which I doubt he is, what he needs to understand historically is that when Europe is democratic and cooperating together, it will be peaceful. But what is happening inside this European Union is, without anybody's consent being given, they are creating a new state. And the scenes in Athens last night showed you that when people aren't able to vote for things that are different, they resort to violence or political extremism. And I would argue that Europe today is looking increasingly unstable. The
Prime Minister acknowledges, of course, that NATO is very important in keeping the peace in Europe, but the European Union is a bulwark against Russia, and that if were Britain to leave, it would fundamentally weaken and fragment the European Union in a way that would be dangerous for peace on the continent. Isn't there significant truth in that argument?
Well, the Prime Minister argues that Britain needs to be part of the European Union to push the project for peace. Had the United Kingdom not been independent of Europe twice in the 20th century, we would have not had the ability to stop things going wrong in Europe. And the idea that now we have to, in a sense, supersede NATO with a new European army with joint control because we fear Russia suggests to me that the EU is becoming militarised with an expanding foreign policy, and we should be deeply nervous of that.
The Prime Minister said that Britain needs to be very aware of the ranks of headstones in Commonwealth graves across the world as we make this decision. It's something which you clearly, I know, feel very strongly about. As he evokes that, what's your response? That, in a way, the legacy of those wars needs to be a vote to remaining in the European Union.
We fought those wars so that we and the rest of Europe could be independent, democratic and free. And what is happening to us over decades, using the argument about trade, is we are losing our independence, we are losing our democracy, and become part of a club to which increasingly people feel angry and resentful. We see the far right and the far left growing in European politics. We see violence on the streets of Athens now on a regular basis. We're headed to a bad place, and I want to live in a Europe of democratic nation states cooperating and trading together. And if we vote for Brexit, we'll give the example to the rest of the continent too.
The Prime Minister was also saying it's not just the peace on the continent at stake, but it's the safety of people in Britain at stake, and that terror cooperation across the EU, from the European arrest warrant, DNA sharing, Interpol, Europol, makes a huge difference, and that you have got no answer to how you would replace those networks were Britain to be outside the European Union.
Well, we cooperate with America, Australia, Canada, and as far as Europe's concerned, they get more intelligence information from us than we get from them. Just look at the state that Belgium is in terms of dealing with terror. But some of the aspects of this worry me. The European arrest warrant is an abomination to anybody that believes in our own system of common law. You know, for people from this country, on the say-so of a magistrate, with no prima facie evidence, being removed from Britain and put in Greek prisons where they can languish for 18 months without facing a charge, is everything this nation has always been against.
Nigel Farage, the UKIP leader, many thanks indeed.
Big Man Tyrone here. Make sure to subscribe to the wicked awesome Robin Hood UKIP YouTube website. He exposes the leftist crops on the British brainwashing corporation. Nice.